minus 3, 2, 1, 0.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to episode 85 of the Launch Sequence podcast. We're doing this one live. We're here on Twitch live today on January. What is it? Oh my gosh, I don't know the date. It's the 6th.
The 6th.
And I'm here with one of the OGs, one of a good friend, honestly, and another Star Citizen YouTuber, TheAstroPub. Are you still?
I sure feel old.
You hold on. You recently split off a channel, a YouTube channel, to kind of separate your lore content from your informative content. Do you still go on by TheAstroPub? Do you prefer historian? Yeah. Pub.
I mean, just call me Paul. That works.
Paul
I mean,
works?
if I could call myself Paul Shelley, I would. It would just be so simple.
The
But the
AstroPaul.
AstroPub is the AstroPaul. Yeah. Yeah, I do lore content still, but the nature of the beast when it comes to YouTube content is that YouTube does not like people diversifying and doing things that are different. So
It'd be like
they
that.
demand put you in a box. So I had to put myself in a box to make it easier. So
All right. Well, thanks for joining me today. We've had Paul's been on a few times, quite a bit actually, and we've talked a lot of Star Citizen, but we've also talked some Starfield. And today we're going to do both again. First, we're going to talk a little bit about Starfield, some of the stuff, some of the things, some recent updates with that game. But then we're going to jump into what is to come in Star Citizen in 2023, the biggest features, and if server meshing is going to be on the list for us. Now, that's a conversation to be had, so we'll wait till we get to that. But real quick before we get started, give everybody kind of an overview of what you do, and then throw us into the topic. Tell us what's been going on with Starfield.
Hello, my name is Paul Berserker One Batman Shelley. I am the host and space bartender at the TheAstroPub, which is a Twitch channel that I do. I stream Thursdays, Fridays, Saturdays, and Sundays. A lot of that content can also be found on the TheAstroPub Live, youtube.com/TheAstroPub Live for my video content, including things like office hours, where I do a live stream AMA. They take sections out of that, turn them into standalone videos. And I also do the Captain's Table, which is kind of a podcast like this, where we just kind of talk Star Citizen, bring people from all over the Star Citizen universe just to sit down and talk about specific topics, news, whatever. This goes on Saturdays. Then I also, as Space Tomato had kind of pointed out, I also do lore content. I do lore content for Star Citizen, but I've also done lore for Starfield and for Cyberpunk and a couple of other. I even did an Anthem lore video at one point.
Anthem.
So that's how long I've been doing this. Just one. I only did one, and then the game
all you
decided
had
to kill
time
itself.
for.
Yeah. So, but that's the Astro Historian, youtube.com/theastrohistorian. And right now, there's a huge long-running series that I've started because I hate myself, that I call The Complete History of Star Citizen Lore.
I love that.
Which it is literally a timeline from the very beginning of the lore timeline that we have all the way up to the modern day. And why I hate myself, just to give you context, is the first video covered about 200 years of history. The second video covered about 100 years of history. And the next one that's coming out, which I finished writing and recording and sent it off to my editor. It will be out soon. It covers 80 years of history, and they're all the same length. They're all the same length.
The
so
density.
as you get forward closer to the modern time, you said the density starts to come tighter and tighter and tighter. And once we reach things like the 29th century, which is only 100 years before the current time in Star Citizen, I will probably have to do it in decades. That's how dense this lore gets.
It's great though.
Yeah, it's appropriate because that's the other bit of news that a lot of people may be kind of slip over, which is kind of interesting concept, which is the lore team is no longer going to be doing weekly updates on the lore. They're still doing some of the stuff. They're no longer doing lore stories. There's no more stories from the verse that they're going to be coming out on a Tuesday, every Tuesday, because they're focusing it on the game, which is good and bad thing, which is kind of a nice little thing to slide in there before we get into that point. But
that is kind of good and bad, because that was a nice insight into some of the stuff they were thinking. But at the same time, it's, as we've been seeing on the monthly reports, it's nice to see that lore is becoming a bigger focus in the actual game.
so people can actually experience it,
Yeah.
rather than just me.
Yeah, because you're you're the freaking lore master. You're over here whipping and swinging lore left and right, and I'm like, this doesn't exist. There's no way this exists, but you keep pulling it out, and like you said, you got multiple hundreds of years with all this super detailed stuff that you just never hear about. Like, put that in the background text of a quest somewhere, please.
Yeah, having a crashed Zeus somewhere in Stanton, so you can be like, well, how did this get here? Or in Pyro when that comes out, like, how did that get here?
Yeah,
and a detailed story. People would say, like, what is the ship? It's like, oh, that's the first ship that ever had a quantum drive, or had a commercial quantum drive, and people being like, what?
There it is.
That kind of cool things is what I want to see.
It's so good. That's so good. There's exploration gameplay. Like that's the heart of it right there. But anyways, the lore man himself. So whenever we get to lore for this year, I'm just going to give you the stage and we could talk all about that.
We just talk about lore. I'll go. We'll do it. I'll do a recap of all the stuff that happened this year in terms of lore stuff.
Oh boy.
But in terms of the other thing that like I said, I mentioned I do Starfield lore. I've done a couple of videos on it.
Yeah.
Starfield. So we have seen a little bit of updates since the last time we talked about Starfield. There has been a not so insignificant amount of information. Unfortunately, none of it is gameplay. So we have information, but no video. There's been no video updates.
It's interesting. They're kind of going the same route that Cyberpunk did with their sort of VDoc series for a few months before the game came out, but they're just doing interviews. They're just sitting and talking about it as opposed to like showing the game itself.
Yeah, which we were talking about beforehand about how it feels so weird following Starfield when you compare it to something like Star Citizen, where we just know, like, Chris Roberts decided to pick his booger. We'll find out next week. Like, that's just how detailed this information can get sometimes.
Yeah.
Whereas with Starfield, we get a weird cryptic signs. We have to read the tea leaves with Todd Howard trying to figure out what he actually means when he says something.
Got to look at the spoon. Is it bending?
Yeah. Are the entrails of this beast telling me the future? Will we have 30 FPS? I need to know.
It's an interesting comparison because I often think about the idea of, like, when I'm looking at a game like, say, Starfield or Cyberpunk was coming out or Halo Infinite was coming out, just any of the games I'm excited for, I look at them coming up and I'm like, what would it be like if this game was handled the same way as Star Citizen in terms of communication and I knew everything coming up to that release? Would I be that much less hyped or more hyped for the game? And I wonder if that's going to positively or negatively impact Star Citizen as it approaches that point, however many decades away it might be.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question, just because we're in a situation where Star Citizen is unique in that they pretty much leave everything they have out in the vine. Like, we can see everything. The sausage is not being hidden away from us at all. All of the gooey insides and the terrible and good parts of game development are laid bare with Star Citizen.
Slapping us around in the face with delays.
Yeah, so we don't know how it's actually going to affect the overall, like, sales or the hype or even the morale amongst the CIG staff. So
right, yeah. So what have we heard recently about Starfield? What is, like, the big news that's come out? Because we know it's still supposed to be coming out this year, right?
Yes, that was the big announcement. Was they came out this year and like earlier this month and said it's still planned to release within the first half of this year. So it's releasing anytime between January and like July is what their plan is.
Which is a weird launch window.
Yeah, that's very weird for Bethesda, because Bethesda usually releases in November. Almost all of their stuff has been released in November. Now, to be fair, Starfield was supposed to release last November, but then they delayed it.
Right. Now they're probably trying to meet some fiscal year at this point. Make sure they're not getting too many quarters out from that.
But usually when you see something like this, from a marketing perspective, especially something as big as Starfield, you usually have a year ramp up of advertisements to kind of really coincide.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you see a release coming in, say, June of this year, we should already be seeing advertisements for Starfield. We should be seeing billboards and ads on YouTube. And I haven't seen anything.
Nothing other than that first demo.
Yeah, nothing. And there's been no advertisement paid because it is Bethesda's now owned by Microsoft, so Microsoft has a lot of has a lot of money to throw around, and we know from the past. Look at any Halo campaign, Halo ad campaign. Microsoft is not opposed to throwing money around, and Microsoft has been very open as to that Starfield is a system seller. They want to make it a system seller. They want to be able to sell Xbox Game Pass and Xbox Ones with Starfield because it's exclusive to that console.
Franchise energy.
Yeah. They want to turn this into, the next Elder Scrolls, the next Fallout. They want it to be this huge thing that is exclusive to Microsoft consoles and Microsoft, products.
Yeah.
And it's very weird to not have that advertisement ramp up as we've been as they have right now. It feels almost like they forgot about it. Like that's the scary part.
Yeah, it is interesting that we've seen them do short ad campaigns, like I think for Fallout 4 they did that, but that was kind of a surprise thing. Like they brought it the summer before just to kind of catch us all off guard, but this time everybody knows what it looks like. It is very interesting that we don't have a good idea of like all that much about the game. We've seen base building, shipbuilding, resource gathering, fighting, like that kind of stuff, but we still haven't seen the game in its actual form being played all that much, other than that one demo.
And a lot of that had placeholders, as people had pointed out recently. Like the shotgun shells were not actually shells; they were just bullets. A lot of the animations were reused animations from Fallout 4. So there's a lot of reuse of the stuff. It's stuff you'd expect to see with a tech demo, but it's a tech demo, not a alpha product that's going to be released now in 6 months that we have no idea what it looks like.
Well,
because we haven't seen updates.
People expect Bethesda games to be relatively underfinished when they come out, and I do expect it to be something decent and fun, but we all kind of are going to wait for mods to really get the full experience. They also mentioned something about performance.
Yes, right? That was going to say, get into that. That also kind of ties into Todd Howard. So Todd Howard did like an hour and a half long interview.
Oh yeah,
where
with Lex.
He sat down and they kind of talked about Starfield and a bunch of other things, but Starfield was the main focus. And a couple of things we learned about it was, one, Todd Howard seemed to imply, and that hasn't come out as that wasn't what he meant, was that he doesn't expect Starfield to be able to run above 30 FPS. Now, it's hard to tell if that's exclusively for the Xbox or if that's also for PC. PC usually it tends to be more based off of your hardware performance, your hardware specs, but who knows? And that may be the bench that they're looking for, even with PC, is 30 FPS, which is a very low bench. And then he also heavily implied that they're going for more gameplay, which means graphical fidelity has to be sacrificed. So the graphical fidelity will be lower, at least implied, compared to previous games that they've done, and it'll be at 30 FPS, both of which aren't game breakers, especially since most people don't play Bethesda games because they look good. I mean, Bethesda games don't look bad, but you don't play Bethesda because you want to look at a pretty vistas. You play Bethesda games because of the expansive world and the universe and all those sorts of things. So it's not as bad, but it is kind of concerning to hear that as Todd Howard speaking in cryptic language in an interview as the only way we know about this.
Yeah, hopefully that's not the case, because it doesn't look good enough that I would think it would be restricted in that regard. And you say you don't think of Bethesda games as being for the looks, but I kind of have higher standards now, we got to the point where it's easier to get good looks, and I would love to see them trying to push above and beyond something, say, like, I don't know, Outer Worlds, or even Mass Effect Andromeda. Say that's the benchmark for like a space RPG. I would love to see something that looks better than that. Maybe we will, but 30 FPS is kind of low for a PC game. And it's surprising to see, considering the scope too. I mean, now we could start comparing that to Star Citizen, how it runs. I've never really gotten above 30 frames with my own computers, but I know it can easily run above that at this point with good computer hardware. So like, what's the comparison there?
Well, and Star Citizen's not optimized. Like they've even come out and recently said, I forget who was the person in charge of it, but that the person who does the Gen 12 stuff came out and basically said, this is just Gen 12.
Oh,
We
yeah,
haven't even
Sylvan.
started optimizing it yet.
Yeah.
Sylvan basically said, we haven't even started optimizing yet. This for 318, as it stands, and I'm getting 30 to 40 frames per second. So it's weird to see that, but
And this is a multiplayer game.
yeah, this is a single player game, which should be easier to deal with a lot of the frame issues and performance. So the other thing, which is good and bad, is they did a big kind of vidoc sort of look at the kind of non-story based missions that will be going on, like the stuff that's the fluff that's going to fill out the universe outside of the main story line, the main quest. And for those who are familiar with it, if you remember, I'll trigger a lot of people's PTSD with this one, but another settlement needs your help. I'll mark it on your map. If you recognize that meme and or that word, that is the basis upon which their sort of non-traditional quests will be
Leave
set
me alone,
at. So,
Space Preston.
Yeah. So that is that's concerning to some people, because that was probably the most boring that a lot of people just didn't like those quests. They seem very repetitive.
Definitely one of the worst parts of that game. Well, maybe not the worst, but an annoying part.
Yeah. But they did have some other benefits things. The designer who talked about this said the concept now is it can spawn randomly. It can happen like along the side of a road leading to a settlement. You can run into these quests at a settlement, which will lead you into a different place, and all of these will be different experiences depending on the person who you're interacting with and depending on your gameplay, which seems to imply, at least in my mind, that the way that designs for things like the settlements and the non-standard place is going to be probably a little bit more procedural.
Mm-hmm.
I'd love to have more information on that, because my mind goes to that based off of what Bethesda has done is they probably have made several specific tile sets. So when you land on a planet, that they just kind of pull one of the 5 tile sets for this type of planet out and then slap it down. And then that is going to be that location no matter where when you come back to that planet, it'll be the location no matter what.
Yeah.
Which would be cool, because it means that my gameplay is different from, your gameplay. And so like I could find a settlement that's randomly generated and you couldn't, playing through all throughout the same concepts, keep these things fresh and each gameplay unique. That would be cool, but it's hard to tell. But the idea is that it's much more natural. It's not as forced as another settlement needs your help. Boom. It's more like you show up and then someone will approach you being like, hey, I need your help. This is what I need. So it's not Preston screaming at you. It's now 1,000 different Prestons with different dialogue options.
It's like what we see in Red Dead Redemption. With strangers asking for help. It's a cool system. It could be good. It could get bland. It's really hard to know. But overall, I'm excited for this as a single player game to just kind of sink into, like, by myself on a couch, just, play late. I remember back when I think it was Mass Effect 2 came out, I played like 12 hours in the first sitting. It was the longest I think I've ever done. And I think I'll do that with this one too, because I'm really excited for it. But in terms of all engrossing sort of like holy grail space game that I'm always looking for, it doesn't sound like it's really gonna reach that for me.
No, I think it's going to be an interesting space game. I think we've both talked about this in the past. We're both members of good space game is good for all space games.
Absolutely.
So if Starfield does well, I don't understand the concept where people are like, oh, Starfield's going to kill Star Citizen or whatever. It's like if Starfield does well, it'll encourage more people to look for other games in the genre.
Yeah.
And they'll find things like Elite Dangerous, No Man's Sky. They'll find things like Mass Effect if they haven't already found it. Kerbal Space Program. They'll find things like Star Citizen and Squadron 42. So like all of these games will help each other out, because it's a genre that is underrepresented in most mainstream senses. You don't really see a lot of space-based RPG AAA titles. They don't exist, or even space-based titles. The only one I can think of that's mainline there's only two, and both of them were received poorly, which was No Man's Sky and Call of Duty Infinite Warfare. And at least No Man's Sky had a redemption arc.
Yeah, came back.
But Infinite Warfare, I think, is woefully. It's a good game that people just didn't like because it wasn't what they wanted, which it made me sad. It's a great space game if you haven't played it. It's pretty cheap now too.
It's good now.
Yeah.
But anyways, that's Starfield. Now let's talk about the main attraction today, which is the year ahead in Star Citizen and what the most exciting features are. And of course, the first thing we're going to talk about, the big question, is server meshing going to be on that list? I think it depends on who you ask, how optimistic they are, but let's talk about the realistic possibilities of server meshing coming this year and whether people should be hanging their every hope on it or not.
I will start by saying Chris Roberts and let's see, who is the other person who said it specifically. I remember I had the news up here earlier.
Is it Aaron?
It was Clive Johnson. So specifically, Clive Johnson and Chris Roberts themselves have both said, do not quote them on the Q4 2023. They both said these are estimates. Mm-hmm. There's an entire paragraph where Chris Roberts says, this is the best estimate. It's not meant as a 100%. We're going to do it. And Clive Johnson said, it is an R&D project. It's still an active R&D. And because it's an active R&D, they don't know. And to compare this with, say, PES didn't reach a prototype stage where they were showing it off to the management team until like May or June of last year. So they don't even have that stage yet. They haven't effectively meshed servers together yet. That's what Clive Johnson seemed
I wonder
to
if we'll get a letter when that does happen too.
We probably will. They seem to be especially Chris Robertson, very excited about those sorts of things. So, or at least get an update on it, I'm sure. Mm-hmm. But they seem to be confident, but they are factoring in a lot of other factors, like it's RD, based off of that. They effectively said, based off of having some bumps, this is what we're expecting. If there are more, then obviously we won't make it, but we'll update you. So personally, I would say Chris Roberts might have said nothing about 4.0 coming out, just that it's coming out. Because that's about as good as you can get. I would not hang my hat on the realities of 4.0 coming out this year. It's just there are so many other factors and other variables that can come up that it's hard to tell. So,
but Paul, why should I believe that it's any closer to coming within from now than it was 2 years ago?
Because they're actively developing it and they're talking about it. When CIG doesn't talk about it, when that's the thing that a lot of people don't seem to understand, because, and I don't mean this as an offensive thing. It's just y'all don't read. Y'all don't do this thing called reading. And I get it. You're gamers. Gamers don't read.
I have trouble with that. I struggle.
Yeah. People would prefer other people read it to you, that kind of thing. And or you see nice flashy videos. You play video games to play a video game, not to read. But when you read monthly reports and you read the progress trackers and you read other updates by the various different developers, the implication is it's being worked on. And if it's being worked on, it means it's within 6 months to a year from seeing some sort of release. When they stop talking about it, that's when you know that it's either stopped being worked on or it's about to be released. Those are the two options. And sometimes they do. A good example of this is modularity. They talked a lot about modularity 2 years ago, and then they shut the hell up about it. They have not said anything about modularity, except for when they're directly asked through like those big meetings with John Crew sitting down with
like
Jared,
vehicle team getting together.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's the key. If one person's talking about it, if it's like you see it referenced 3 or 4 times, something's going on because there are multiple people talking about it, or it's one person talking about it over multiple different platforms. So
how about CitizenCon 2019 when they jumped to Pyro?
that wasn't actually pyro.
Right. So
that wasn't actually jumping either.
So do you think that they kind of should have avoided that one?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
It was a classic case of what do we call I guess vertical slice would be the perfect way of doing it. That was a vertical slice, which is when you do a vertical slice, it's not necessarily something that is 100% going to be in the game, but it's everything you can mock up to make it look like what you want to see. You see this at E3 all the time. If you ever noticed, like, and this is for everybody, look at videos of a game that you followed, Battlefield or Call of Duty or Witcher or whatever. Look at the gameplay footage they released before they released the game and notice the HUD. Pay attention to if the HUD is the same. Because if the HUD is not the same, it means that they changed it. And you also probably have noticed, like, there'll be some story-based games where they have a little vertical slice of like a specific mission or a specific part of a story. And then you go to play the game and it's slightly different. A famous example is like Halo 2. There was the Halo 2 demo on the streets of New Mombasa was very different from what the actual Halo 2 release was.
Yeah.
And that's because that was a vertical slice. It was building an engine and an idea of what they wanted to do, but they didn't actually have the game done. And so that's the same kind of concept. Whenever you see those stage demos of them playing something, it's even the Squad 42 demo. It's more of them taking the assets they have and showing off what they want it to look like. But I doubt that the actual gameplay of, say, that mission in Squadron 42, that side mission they showed off, is probably completely different from what we saw versus when it releases, what it will look like.
Yeah.
If it even exists. So
like the power management stuff that they did in that, I bet definitely got to work over now that they actually have a system that works for that.
Yeah.
So server meshing is something to be interested in updates on this year. We'll be seeing it in the monthly report. We'll probably get some updates on it in terms of Spectrum posts and maybe a letter. But in terms of actually getting into the game, you're kind of tempering your expectations on it.
Yeah, in general, I would say there's a lot of stuff that this year is not going to be the year for Pyro, I don't think. But I also think that a lot of people put way too much emphasis on Pyro. They think that Pyro, because I think it makes sense. It's a new system. It's expansion.
CIG,
it is.
They put the emphasis on it.
That's true. That's true.
Yeah.
CIG has been talking about it. But you also notice that CIG has changed their language.
Mm-hmm.
2020, it was the road to Pyro. In 2021 and 2022, it was the road to 4.0. Because they've changed it from being Pyro to 4.0 to emphasize not that it's Pyro, but the content that's coming with Pyro.
Yeah, it's 3.0. It'd be like being excited for 3.0 because of Daymar. It's like, yeah. You're getting Daymar, but like also. And so in the same spirit, that's kind of what we're here to talk about today, is what is all the other also. There's clearly, even if server meshing doesn't come out this year, there are still going to be updates. We're still going to be getting other features. And today we're going to talk about what some of those possibilities are. So I've already listed out a list for me and Paul to both start with, but I'm going to throw it to you. Give us a first feature to talk about. What are you looking forward to coming this year?
This year, let me take a look because we had that list earlier. I'll pull for something from this.
All right.
Vehicle tractor beams. Honestly, from that list, the vehicle tractor beams and SRVs in general.
Yeah,
I'm looking forward to that.
Okay. That's a good one. I like that. That's a good start. So let's talk about why. Not just vehicle tractor beams, but because they are probably closely linked to the SRV, why those two are probably coming this year.
Why that's coming this year? Well, first of all, tractor beams have been in the game now for over a year. The SRV has been actively worked on, and we've seen updates. It's been in like gray box or final art. It's been close to being completion for a while now.
Mm-hmm.
They've also showed off the tractor tool, like the two-handed gun tool before. Been working on that. And there's also, obviously, we know that the cargo
The cargo
refactor.
Yeah.
The cargo refactor needs, and to expand the cargo refactor beyond the 1 SCU boxes to the 32 SCU boxes and those other ones, they need to have the more varied cargo or like tractor beam stuff. And CIG has been working extensively on tractor beams, including, well, I remember it was last year they had a teaser, which was the Sure Grip tractor beam on the front of 315 that they had modeled out as what it will eventually, what its final version will be.
Mm-hmm.
And we've been starting to see tractor beam like attachments on things like the Taurus and other things. So that's one of those things where it's almost certain to come out next year, especially in support of the gameplay that they've already added with 318 and will be continuing to go forward with. So, and why it's important is it's cargo. It's the commodities gameplay. It's piracy as well and smuggling and all those other things. That's all part of that, making it so it's not just 1 SCU boxes or hand boxes everywhere. It's the variety of different boxes. So.
Yeah. When they added the multi-tool tractor beam, the way we played the game kind of changed, right? We started to interact a lot more with boxes. We started to be able to do missions like Xenothreat, where you could just like easily move a lot of containers to another ship. Expanding that out to like these bigger ships and the bigger boxes would be very nice. So you drew a line between, or a connection between, the vehicle tractor beams and the larger cargo boxes. Do you think those would be the same update? You think they might be offset? How do you think that would work?
It's hard to tell. This is one of the first years that CIG hasn't given us a long-term look at what they plan on doing, like 2 to 3 patches ahead of time.
Yeah.
So it's hard to tell exactly what the priorities will be. But I, based off of what I've seen, I think the freight elevators, the cargo refactor, but the extensive cargo refactors and changing how missions will work, I think all of those are connected. Hard to tell exactly when those will drop, but I think that the SRV and the other beams, tractor beam attachments, I think that is probably a progenitor to the rest of that stuff. It will likely come in before we see any new changes to the other stuff.
That's what I was thinking. SRV first, Taurus, 315, Argo, Nomad, all those other things get their utility mounts later. Do you think that we might see the handheld tool, not the multi-tool attachment, but the actual tractor beam tool as well?
Yeah, I think so. I do think we'll see the Taurus and the 315P. I think we'll get those at around the same time as the SRV.
Okay.
Because it's I don't think there's going to be a significant difference. It's just going to be the size of the beam. But it's hard to tell exactly how much would we put in there, because it's not like a fundamental change in how the ships will work. Kind of like how damage and salvage requires you to go through every single ship and make it all very unique. And same with like the HUDs and there's a lot of issues, or with like the resource management. That's a huge kind of extensive issue. You have to go through every single ship.
Yeah.
With tractor beams, it's just like guns like we have now, or mining lasers. It's just a matter of taking the same thing and shrinking it or expanding it.
Yeah,
So.
and I hope you're right, because I thought we were going to get them last year. I thought it was better timing last year, the way they were teasing it and talking about it. But I do think that it has always been very closely related, something they've wanted to be very closely tied to the cargo refactors. So it makes more sense now that we're in the midst of that we can start to expect something with vehicle tractor beams, because we will have to use vehicle tractor beams for the larger boxes, which they have confirmed are coming with freight elevators and persistent hangars, which, I guess is another great feature we can talk about coming this year. So overall, I guess let's just talk about the next step of the cargo refactor itself, because it does include a few different features. You want to get us kicked off on that?
Sure. Freight elevators was weird because I thought it was one thing, and Chris seems to be implying it's another. He talked about both of these things in the letter to the chairman.
Mm-hmm.
And what he mentioned was Persistent hangars is where you're going to store cargo, and freight elevators is going to let you access your cargo from your persistent hangars. Now, I don't know what this means because it seems to imply that we will have access to a hangar that is not the typical landing hangars in, say, stations or landing zones, but will be able to hold our cargo. So that's a little more of like a, how is this going to function? Because
you
we still
don't
have no
think
idea.
you don't think they're just going to instance hangars for us?
No, because why would you need freight elevators then? Because freight elevators are specifically designed, as Chris said, to be able to take your cargo off your ship, put it in the freight elevator, and then take it down to a persistent hangar where it will store your cargo there until you need to sell it or keep it somewhere else.
Well, I assumed the way it would work was persistent hangars would be connected to the cargo decks or whatever by the freight elevator. So like a straight line there and back instead of the elevators to the starport. And then you would take the stuff off that elevator onto the ship. You're saying you think that the freight elevators would have a completely different area from where your ship is?
Yeah. And that's the thing. It's like I originally thought that what the freight elevators would reference was going to be the cargo deck. Like say you do a mission where you have to pick up certain cargo from the station, you go to the cargo deck, you load that stuff onto the freight elevators, and you send the elevator down to your ship, and then you load it on your ship and you fly away.
Yeah.
But in the letter to the chairman, Chris mentions both the freight elevators and the persistent hangars together as if they're part of the same gameplay. And that seems to imply that there's a storage of if stuff, not just a persistent. It's not like you just land in a hangar and then you log out and you come back and that ship is still in that hangar. It seems to imply that there is a storage of material, not just a storage of your ship.
Yeah, I figured you'd be able to just keep your cargo in the same hangars as your ships.
Yeah,
So-
but that would also mean that other people wouldn't get access to them.
Well,
So
yeah,
and that seems
that's why it would be instance
unless,
though, right?
well,
So
we don't know if it's going to be instance or not. Like that's the thing.
That's why I assume it's instance, because only you can get to that hangar now. Like if somebody wants to go to your hangar, they're actively going to have to be in the elevator with you.
Yeah, well, we have to know information about it because it's also
Right.
Chris Roberts, and Chris Roberts is insane. So he's the kind of guy who would say, there's only a certain amount of access. Like there's only 12 hangars on the space station. There's only 12 hangars in the space station. No one else is landing because I want it to be realistic and I want it to be like.
I could totally see them trying to do that.
Yeah. So we need more information about that, but it's hard to tell. Now, I can say that almost certainly this is aimed at commodity trading and trying to improve the commodity trading experience beyond what it is right now. If 318 is the pirate patch, then whatever patch that you see freight elevators and persistent hangars is going to be the trader's patch. It'll be the patch where you actually see people buy stuff, hold on to it, wait for the market to dip, and then go sell it, or gather stuff and hold on to it and then give it to somebody else if they find it, that sort of thing. So
yeah. And so besides these freight elevators, we got the persistent hangars. What else is there to kind of flesh out that second cargo refactor update that we know of? We talked about the tractor beams as well, but how about larger SCU boxes? Did they mention anything about that? I know they've talked very briefly about their next step.
They haven't, but they do. I know that they want to. I mean, I expect that this year. I would almost certainly expect that this year. It's a simple, easy win for them, but it really depends on their priorities. We've seen in the past CIG shift priorities overnight, and January is the month that they do that.
Right.
Though it seems like Chris Roberts seems to really want to focus on that based off his letter from the chairman. So usually what Chris wants, Chris gets. So I would almost certainly, based off of Chris's statement, I almost certainly would say we're going to get different sized SCU containers this year, because it's mostly just an art asset. Just model it out, have that in there, and then have it accessible by different tractor beams and such.
Yeah.
I'm sure the issue is more of making it work with the grids. That kind of, because right now everything's set to one SCU grid, so having a 32 SCU box on a one SCU grid is, you have to kind of figure out how many SCU does that actual footprint work.
Yeah, that's going to take a lot to change all that up. Ultimately, I'm excited and interested in it, but still, we don't really know enough. I do agree with you, though. I think a lot of that stuff is going to come this year, and you pointed out a very good point there. All of the features we're talking about here are things that we have a lot of proof will likely come this year. Actually, we'll specifically point out the ones that don't, but most of them have a lot of proof that are pointing to them coming this year. But anything can change and slip based on priorities and dependent things and other stuff going wrong. So don't take any of this as law. Just kind of take it as educated guess.
It's important to keep that in mind because, like I said, this is the first year we've had where we just have no idea what CIG's long-term plans are because they just won't tell us until the patch comes up.
Yeah.
So we can only base it off of the progress tracker, the monthly reports, and statements by CIG staff. And using all of those sorts of reading skills, those deductive reasoning skills, deductive reasoning skills about all that stuff. That's the best I can guess. Yeah, these are best guesses, but it's completely up to CIG, and CIG tends to do two major shifts in policy. This is the thing to keep in mind in terms of like direction, which is at the end of January and the end of June. So like towards the end of this month, we'll know more solidly what's going to come out between now and June. And then in June, they'll reprioritize whatever they're going to reprioritize. Though that hasn't changed much because Chris Roberts has been pretty consistent. What he said in last May, is effectively at least the same steps that he wants to do for this year. It's just
delayed.
Delayed timeline is all it is. Yeah. So.
Okay, so the cargo refactor is cool. We talked a little about how it's going to be very commodity focused, trade focused. So that obviously leads into the next one. Honestly, the biggest question for me of the year is, could we expect anything changing with the actual economy itself?
I really hope so. This is the biggest question because in my mind, there are really three major pillars that make Star Citizen a unique game compared to other games. Mm-hmm. One of which is PES in terms of how it handles the persistence aspect of the game. The other one is server meshing, being able to scale the size of the universe. And the last one being quantum, because I think it's one of those things that nobody realizes, or I feel like nobody realizes. I feel like a madman in the wilderness screaming out, being like, you people don't understand. Quantum controls everything. It is the game. It is the closest.
Feels unreal. Like I can't get, I'm so pumped for it. I've made videos about it and talked about it, but I understand people not being super impressed because it just feels very abstract right now. We haven't seen any sort of reason to believe it's going to work.
I mean, honestly, we actually have. I would argue we have because the current combat missions, the dynamic combat missions that happens, the SOS stuff, that's all controlled by Quanta.
So but have you noticed it making a difference?
Yeah.
Have you noticed that more?
It won't show up in certain areas and it will show up in others. And I've seen more people attempt those missions and travel to those locations because they want to do those missions because they've actually done a pretty good job of the payouts. Now, I don't think the rewards are dynamic. I think that the mission rewards are the same. They're static based off of lots of the similar factors. But that's just kind of like a small little addition where it's taking the probability volumes and expressing that as a mission. The one little tiny little bit of hopium that I have because of the kernel of hope that I have that this might happen is that Chris Roberts mentioned at the end of CitizenCon that Tony Z was working like a madman to add something to 318 late in the development. And if anybody knows, Tony Z is the quantum guy. He's the economy guy. And him trying to add something to 318 sounds like, okay, what were you trying to add? Obviously, he didn't make it because we would have heard about it if it was added to 318. But what is that?
Like he's also on systemic teams or services and tools, though, right? They work on a couple of other things.
It could have been some other things, but my hope, my little kernel of hope.
Yeah, I would
because we also know the dynamic mission system was worked on last year. Right. We don't know if it's finished or not, but it did have a sprint in the middle of last year, and we haven't heard about it since.
It was a
And that,
late delay, right?
yeah,
Wasn't it
yeah.
supposed to be in 318 or was it 317 too or
I don't think it was
something?
ever. I don't think it was ever given to like a release view, but it was on the progress tracker that it was going to be added.
I could have sworn
There's
we had
work on.
environmental missions on release view.
Oh yeah, we did. It
Yeah.
was on release view. That was a. I think that was a 318 thing. Yeah.
Yeah. Maybe
But
that's what he was working on.
Maybe, because that is something that we may see exported to 319, because that was one of those things where I think they removed it, but alongside a couple of other things when it came to like arena commander, like the new arena commander map for Jericho Station and such. I remember that got removed at the same time. So who knows? That could actually be coming this year simply because 319.
It'd be nice. Sorry, go ahead.
Good. I'd say to the extent, I have no idea. It'd be nice to be able to have the commodities run off of it, but
oh gosh, that'd be great. It would be so keen if they just got the economy update in with the cargo refactor, the probability volumes in with the environmental missions, and the virtual AI in with bounty hunter V2 this year. Like if we got those 3 additions to the quantum simulation along with the features they come with, whoa.
they have to be in some. That has to be in some stage of development, simply because of Chris's own mentions of things like the how bounty hunting, at least it's his mention of bounty hunting, seems to, because he's been harping on bounty hunting. He's been harping on bounty hunting for what?
Since like 3.0.
Yeah,
just
well,
likes to talk about it.
But he pulled it out of nowhere in the letter of the chairman in last May. It was one of those things where like you or I and a lot of other people who've been following the game, at least for me, it came out of left field. I had not heard any mention of a bounty hunting 2.0 in years. And now suddenly it was just a priority from Chris.
I think Tony Z might have mentioned it in one of his quantum talks about virtual AI. And then that was kind of like the forewarning. But yeah, it really wasn't much of a focus in any way up until that letter. And then it started to be like a possibility, and it's on the progress tracker. I mean, I guess that's the next feature we should talk about. The bounty hunting looks like it's going to be the first profession in the game to take that next step up. Do you know what it's including?
I know that it's supposed to be tracking, disabling, capturing, and returning. And this is one of those things where I have to kind of explain a little bit of lore as to why this is important, because this lore was created either serendipitously or intentionally for bounty hunting.
Okay.
Chris, way back in the day, he took a look at the Shadows of Mordor's like Nemesis system, is what they called it. And wanted to do something similar with Star Citizen, where if you had killed a pirate, the NPC would remember you killed them and then come back at you and be a better fighter because they killed you. Now, that didn't make a lot of sense with the lore at the time, but with regeneration lore, effectively, that is how Chris Roberts is going to sneak something like that into the game. On top of that, it also, and this has been kind of a part of the design documents for a long time, is they wanted to emphasize bounty hunting is not a kill, bringing in warm, bringing in cold. It's bringing in warm. It's the only thing they care about. So in the future, especially with bounty hunting version 2, we're likely to see it shift from bounty hunting, where this is what's going to slow bounty hunting down, is it's no longer track someone down, shoot them, and you're done. You have to capture them in order to get the bounty for them. So this is an interesting development, because this will slow that loop down dramatically compared to what we have today.
Yeah.
Because it'll be investigation missions, it'll be disabling, so you have to be less of a combat pilot and more of a pirate. And then you're going to have to disable the person without killing them, then arrest them, and then bring them back alive to be able to get that money. Because again, in lore, it makes sense. A person who's dead will just regen. They're not dead. They're just going to go back to a regen bed, and they'll continue their merry, jolly piracy adventures or the illegal stuff in minutes, if not days, from when they crawl out of that bed. So it doesn't really stop them. the only way you can stop them is by capturing them. So.
Yep. So let's lay out the process then of bounty hunting now and what it's going to be. Right now, you go to your mobiGlas, take a mission, you see a point on your HUD, fly there, blow that person up, you get paid. Where does the new bounty hunting start?
You get a mission either through the mission system or through something, probably likely through the mission system. Then you have to find where they are. So you have to track them where they are.
And that's using security network that they're bringing in.
Yeah, that's using NPC possible interactions, being able to investigate and talk with other people about where they last saw them.
The old bartender.
The old bartender. It's Chris Roberts. It's a Chris Roberts staple.
Yep.
Bartenders are a staple in Chris Roberts games. So, talk to the bartender, get the tips, talk to other people, get their last known location, eventually track them down to a location. Then you're going to have to engage them. They'll either surrender or you have to disable them. You can't kill them. Then you're going to have to board their ship or pull them out of their ship, knock them out at some point, or arrest them, and then bring them back to your ship, hold them in stasis or hold them in some sort of secure bay, say your Hawk in the back or in your Avenger Titan in the bays, or your Cutlass Blue in those little cryopods.
Mm-hmm.
And then you're going to have to fly back to space where you can drop them off and collect the bounty that entire time. And they can possibly escape during that time. We don't know the full extent of that, but
yeah,
that's the full process to get paid. And the payment is only on life, not death, or they may have a reduced payment on death. So, and
we know that they have different components that are part of this that need to be functioning for this to work. So we've seen that they're working on ropes. They've confirmed that they're working on ropes and that they can restrain. We've seen that they are working on non-lethal ways of taking people down. So stun guns have definitely been a thing. We know that I don't actually know if the new Volt weapons will have non-lethal modes, but they've talked more and more about non-lethal weapons that they'll be able to use.
I think they showed off the stun gun at one point, or the stun baton recently.
Preacher armaments.
The preacher arms.
Like that. Yeah, they make it. And then what else is? I mean, they've talked about how the security service will need to work, so you'll be able to check comm arrays to see when somebody has flown in range of that and actually get a readout of it. You'll be able to see when people have requested a landing at a certain place. So all of this investigation sort of idea of going to different places and kind of finding the clues is going to be a part of that bounty hunting process. So this takes one of those missions from, maybe you'll have like another 10-minute bounty where you just fly there and kill them. But maybe you'll also have like a 30 to 40-minute bounty where you actually need to track them down and take them in. And they've talked a little bit about what's going to happen when you get restrained by somebody, right? So like if you get taken in and thrown in the back of like a prison cell, you don't actually have to I won't say anything for sure, but they've kind of hinted at the idea you won't actually have to sit there the whole time, right?
Yeah, they've hinted at the idea of the surrender system, where if you are captured by a player bounty hunter or a NPC bounty hunter, you can just surrender and give up, and you will just be transported immediately to prison. So you're not just stuck in holding. We don't know what degree they're going to do it. CIG seems to be allergic to timers, though that would be something I would suggest is a timer-based system where you have a certain amount of time in captivity before you get the option to just give up. It works with everything else, but yeah, it won't be because they're going to have to figure it out, because it could be abused dramatically by just capturing somebody and then just holding them and just being like, I'm never turning you in. So there's going to have to be some way of getting out.
The trolling.
Yeah.
And that whole, and going back to kind of what you were saying about like the Nemesis system and how people would remember you and all this stuff, that's the introduction of virtual AI, right?
Yeah, virtual AI as well as in-depth reputation, which is something they've been wanting to work on as well. Because you're going to also have reputation where the only way you're going to get higher bounties is if you have good reputation, which kind of works now with the different CS bounty system, where you have to do a certain number of jobs with a specific bounty agency before they give you the higher level difficulties.
Right. Do you think, man, it pains me to say, this is not one that I had on the list because don't see any signs of it coming this year. But do you think we're going to get any reputation updates? We went a whole year. It is painful. I mean, there were some kind of reputation updates, but we went a whole year without any major change to the system. Very disappointingly. Do you foresee anything in 2023?
I don't know. They did seem to say that they wanted to end with 2022 with a more naturalistic system where, depending on where your actions have consequences, that was very early. That was like February, March of last year. They said they wanted to have by the end of the year, when you showed up, you get pulled out of Quantum from, say, Ninetales, and Ninetales would be like, "Oh, you're one of us. You're good.
Yeah.
Bye. Sorry."
Some faction gameplay.
Yes, that kind of stuff. And I think that was what they were working on with the missions we talked about earlier. The whole
environmental missions. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that was part of that. So there's still some hope that we might see that, but I haven't seen anything about reputation being worked on in the monthly reports or progress trackers or anything like that. So I don't know. That's definitely a hope, not a I would expect this year. Sadly,
that one hurts because the reputation's really important, especially for like crime stats and stuff. We need more help in that regard.
I can almost guarantee you that CIG has to do something along that lines if they want to do bounty hunting the way that they want to.
Yeah,
because there's no way you can do that without bounty hunting. The sort of bounty hunting thing they want to without improving the current reputation system. Because then if you're a bounty hunter, you will be on public enemy number 1 for any kind of enemy that you might face. So like if you are capturing Ninetales outlaws, the Ninetales are gonna just not like you, and you will not be able to or they'll keep sending hitmen after you to kill you, or maybe even dynamically generated assassination missions. The kind of counter to the bounty missions, the illegal version of the bounty missions.
Yeah.
So.
Well, hoping for the best on that.
Yeah.
Because reputation's huge, and I think it needs to take a step forward soon. What's something else that you're thinking for next year? Throw me a curveball.
Resource management. Okay. Resource management. just the most important thing.
Yeah,
that is the most important thing this year. That has to make it this year.
That is that's a necessity at this point. Because
like
the longer that takes, the more it's going to take for every ship to get updated with it.
It is one of those dams. It's one of those blockers that has to be done because it blocks so much content. It is almost as important as PES or server meshing. In fact, I would argue it's more important than server meshing.
Ooh,
because
hot take.
Without resource management, we don't get multi-crew gameplay. We don't get more in-depth combat gameplay. We don't get the dynamic damage system that we wanted to have. It is the blocker. It's a blocker for building outposts, because the outpost systems will use the resource management system. It is one of the fundamental blocks, the fundamental building blocks of the game when it comes to how everything will work, because everything from your biggest ships to your spacesuit will use the resource system in the same way.
Yeah.
So
let's explain what it encompasses, because resource is a little ambiguous. They've kind of taken what they used to refer to as their pipe system back in 3.0 days, and they've turned it into an all-encompassing system that, I guess, as the name implies, holds all the resources for a ship or an outpost. What are those resources?
So that is power, heat, and I believe it is fuel. So power, heat, and fuel are the major ones. The way that this works is every ship or every device, and oxygen, and life support. I don't think they call it oxygen. I think they just call it life support.
Mm-hmm.
But every single device, every single suit, building, station, ship has those 4 things. For a spacesuit, for instance, heat is important because that's your life support, like to keep you from freezing to death. Then there's life support. Yeah, or burning to death, because it has to keep you cool as well.
Mm-hmm.
And then there is life support, which is your oxygen, the atmosphere you breathe without a suit, or the atmosphere you have to breathe in your suit. That's going to be limited. There's fuel, which for ships is important because that's how you go to places, but it's also how you turn on your power. And then there's power, which is how you are able to maneuver or do anything. Even your spacesuits will have power because what CIG wants to do, and this all kind of goes into the new traversal system for it's in Squadron 42, the new EVA modes. Like they want to move you away from having infinite EVA fuel. So you'll need EVA fuel, but you also need power to be able to fire those thrusters in the first place, plus also run your cooling system and keep your oxygen systems alive.
Yeah, that's a big one. Just to say that again, because I feel like I missed this the first time I heard it, but they're going to take away the ability to always EVA. They basically are expansing us. They want us to be dependent mainly on pushing off of surfaces and floating through 0G, or using a limited amount of fuel. You know, you have a certain amount of compressed air on your suit. You got to make sure that you're only using it at the right time. They're trying to build more intense situations while EVAing, and it's going to be a big change to the traversal. Yeah. But that's part of the resource.
Or make you spec into that. Have a suit that is dedicated to EVAing so that you don't have to. So if you're doing work on the outside of a ship, or if you need to go outside of EVA to do some activity, you get a dedicated EVA suit. But it won't be like the bee's knees when it comes to combat because it's designed for EVA, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Think of it as the Pembroke and the other armors that we have, which are designed for like extreme climates, stuff like that.
Some purpose-built stuff.
Yeah. So you also have, what's another reason why they have the multi-tool. The multi-tool has the tractor beam. It's not really designed to pick up boxes like we use now. The actual design of that multi-tool is it's a grappling hook. That's what it's supposed to be. You're supposed to be able to use it to grapple, to like use it to attach yourself to an object. And then that whole like reel you in will actually reel you in. You know, the thing that lets you like drag boxes towards you, use that same method to pull you towards an object without using UVA fuel.
Yeah.
So.
And then we've seen, you know, we're still talking resource management, but leaning a little bit into that traversal with the EVA. We've also seen that the EVA animations have changed. So now it looks a little more like you're swimming through space, which isn't necessary, but looks a little natural and more pretty. And then
it's
they've
more
also,
like what you see in NASA stuff. So,
yeah,
you know.
And then they've also shown that you can now push and pull yourself across the surface of areas. So along with those more natural animations, you put your hands on the actual surface of something and you can move around with your hands and angle yourself. So it's all definitely a much more AAA polished kind of actual game feeling way of moving around space. And I think even though it's not like a huge deal, that along with the platforming changes are going to make Star Citizen feel like a much more finished game, even so unfinished.
Yeah. But yeah, that's the thing about Star Citizen is that it's a big web of dependencies. Everything is connected to everything else. And so the resource management is one of those fundamental things that without resource management, we don't get a host of things that we're waiting for everything.
Yeah.
And luckily they've done most of it. The only thing they have left is the actual power and heat and fuel, like that loop. The atmosphere stuff is done. A lot of the process of setting up the resource management is done. It's just that part. And even they said it's going to take a while.
Yeah.
That's one of those things that's almost certainly has to be in the game before the end of the year, just because it's such a blocker.
And the timeline on that was they were telling us about it, I think, fall of 2020. Got another update in the summer of 2022. Summer of 2021, where they told us it was taking longer than they thought it would. And then in 2022 again, where they told us they'd show us this past CitizenCon, where they have finally gave us a look at it running in game, the ability to, and it's crazy, the ability to go into Hammerhead, find the power relays, rip one off the wall, basically cutting the power to that part of the ship, cutting power to the shields, and sabotaging the ship so somebody from outside can blow it up. Like, the amount of emerging gameplay that comes from being able to control like the power, the heat, the gravity, the life support of a ship from the inside or the outside is huge. And agreed, that's something they really should be getting in this year. But they won't be getting it to all ships, right?
No, I don't think so. And I do think that it's so important because it is also the thing that it makes multi-crew gameplay function. Without it, we don't see multi-crew gameplay.
Yeah.
It just won't exist. outside of just being a gunner, you won't be able to do any sort of. It adds meaning and depth to the gameplay. It pushes towards the damage because without the new resource system, you don't have the pipes, which can be damaged, and those nodes, which can be damaged, which means that you have to use the current HP pool system, which is a lot more inelegant compared to having to shoot like specific targets, which will allow for ships to last longer, which will last for more meaningful combat, while you also have people who can run around and repair things while things are going on.
Yep.
It is a huge part of what this game Star Citizen is trying to be. I will throw another curveball if you're ready for this. This is my thing, and I'm going to get you in trouble for it.
All right, do it.
Theaters
Oh God.
of
No.
War.
I don't want to talk about this. This is not. This was not on the list.
I'm just going to throw a curveball. You said curveball. I'm going to throw the curveball at you. And now,
all right, fine.
before everyone
Let's hear it.
screams at me, for anyone screams at me in chat or in the comments, here's my argument. The Arena Commander team was formed last year out of Firesprite. We had, I think, one, maybe two members of Firesprite that came from Firesprite when they got purchased by Sony to come work for CIG, who had been working on Theaters of War and Arena Commander in general. Firesprite was working on the Arena Commander stuff.
Mm-hmm.
They formed an Arena Commander team in February and March of last year, and they've already done a lot of work. If you haven't played Arena Commander or Star Marine, go try it out. It is very different from when you last remembered it. I don't think it's perfect in any way, shape, or form. It's still a work in progress, but it is a lot better than it used to be because they've actually took some time to kind of work out gameplay, make it make sense, make it fun, improve some of the performance and such.
Okay.
They also added their first combat map to Arena Commander since Arena Commander 1.0. We're talking like 2014.
Yeah, it's only been 2 maps, right? For like 8 years.
Yeah, it's only been, they've redone those maps, but like they're adding Jericho Station as a map probably in 3.19. They went from having the 4 or 5 maps of Murray Cup to now having the 6 maps of that they released to a 3.18. Those are all in Arena Commander as well. It's for those racing maps. So in general, there's that team seems to be spooling up. And the reason why, in my mind, why that's happening is because Arena Commander, and make sure to look at this, look at any package that has Squadron 42 in it, just Squadron 42, not Star Citizen, just the Squadron 42 packages.
Okay.
It says in the list of contents, Arena Commander and Star Marine. So Arena Commander and Star Marine and Theaters of War and all of those little bundles all come with copies of Squadron 42. That is the multiplayer for Squadron 42.
Right.
So that needs to be in a much better state if they want to get Squadron 42 out, and even if it's 2 years till the heat death of the universe, whatever. Like if they're actually planning on releasing that game, they're going to have to get Arena Commander in a good shape. And Theaters of War has not stopped being worked on. We've seen leaks on it. We've seen, small updates on it, but they've gone mostly quiet. So with PES being introduced, with the Arena Commander team being fully tooled up and starting to produce more content, especially with this year being kind of no pyro year, it's the perfect year to drop a Theaters of War.
I will agree with you there. It is the perfect year to drop it if it works.
If it works. But a lot of the stuff that they've been working on as well is things like hardening and improving PES that they're going to be working on this year. And the only snag that I see with this comes from desync is terrible. Desync is awful. It is horrendous. But I also think that CIG, it's getting to the point where CIG is going to have to address it. They're going to have to pull people off the server meshing team and actually work on the desync and try to improve it. Because we've known for a while that the desync is not an issue related to server meshing or PES or anything like that. It is just optimizations. They just have to go in and work on the optimizations and fix those problems, which they haven't had the resources to do because they've been focusing on PES.
And you think they'll do that in alpha?
I think they'll do that. I think they'll do that in this summer.
They'd have to do that before Squadron, huh? They're going to have to optimize the parts that are in Squadron, and since they share code base, that mean both. Wow, I didn't even think about that. So will Star Citizen be heavily optimized before it even reaches the beta phase because of that? And is that going to hurt them as they add new features on top of those ops?
I don't think it'll be heavily optimized, but I do think the optimization specifically with the desync issues, with like the network issues, is going to be the thing they're going to have to work on, simply because of that. So, hopefully they're able to hire more people. But that seems to be, at least in 2020, the issue was we don't have the manpower to do it. We know what it is. We have to get to it. We'll get to it eventually, but server meshing is the priority. Persistent entity streaming and server meshing are the priority. That's what they said 2 years ago. But they also have 153 people being hired. So that's my curveball for you. This is the year for Theaters of War. And if I'm right, I will laugh like a maniacal maniac who called it. Otherwise, I'm probably wrong.
If you're right, I will come and find this and I'll post it somewhere for you, because that's a great call and I don't expect it at all.
No, I'm probably wrong. I'm going to say that right now. I'm making the call for the sake of making the call, and I don't expect to be right. But I do. It is one of those things where I say pay attention to Arena Commander and Star Marine.
Yeah,
because they're going to have a lot better performance and I think a lot more content going forward. And Theaters of War is that natural progression.
We'll keep an eye on it.
So,
all right, let's talk about actor status T2. This one is this one's gonna piss some people off. This is going to be much like the last time we got an actor status update, which was 3.15, and they added just like injuries and medical stuff, and it drew a lot of attention to Death of a Spaceman and kind of the idea that our characters aren't forever and that they suffer from these problems that maybe other games don't, or maybe mostly survival games don't. And we know this is coming more with actor status T2. Do you know what's involved in all that?
Not a clue, though. When I can guess based off of Chris's desire for bounty hunting, I think it's going to be a much more detailed and nuanced look at how your character functions. I desperately hope we're not seeing a scum situation or an Atlas situation where you have to have a balanced meal to be able to survive.
Yeah, no, not all that.
But
I've got a description here.
Okay.
Reads, actor status tier 2 looks at a variety of new elements such as hygiene, NPC status tracking, multiple bytes, DNA integrity, medical insurance, cybernetic limbs, and cloning. So honestly, this sounds like a pretty significant step towards Death of a Spaceman. They're talking about insurance, cloning, DNA integrity. That's big.
That's huge.
Do you think that this is all coming from the progress tracker, which shows scheduled work ending in Q2 of 2023? I'm sure we'll see this move again with the January kind of refactor they do. Do you think we'll see this year? Does it sound too early?
I think we'll see some of aspects, because if we see bounty hunting, we're going to see some of this. I think with 4.0 is the really big one, because the other thing that Chris mentioned is AI. The new AI system, the not Derby AI system, the system they showed off at CitizenCon, that they had been working their butts off all last year. The monthly reports was constantly AI this, AI that, AI that. Like, it's the point where like we didn't even see this in CitizenCon, but the AI system that you saw at CitizenCon, they now can pick up heavy weapons, and they have developed a way that those they can use those weapons that not only target players, but ground vehicles and air vehicles and like spaceships. And spaceships can now also target individual people and vehicles on the ground. AI can.
Are they already doing that, or is that 3.19?
No, that's whenever they get that AI system in.
Okay.
And last Chris said anything about that, it was 4.0. And we're going to see that. So.
Well, it was on the letter.
It was on the letter, but Chris is also, I mean, so was 4.0. And as we always said, I don't think I'd expect 4.0 this year.
Yeah,
so.
Yeah, that's true. What else do we have here? Let's see. I guess, what do you think of hacking?
I don't know. I think that goes hand in hand with the Legionnaire. because it's the hacking ship we have.
Mhm.
So
You
I
think it'll be
that's
linked to the ship and it won't come out before that?
I think they'll come at the same time. I think whenever they think hacking's coming out, they'll put resources towards the Legionnaire to have that, make sure that comes out at the same time. I think they'll have the hand version of it, just like Salvage, but but just like with Salvage, with the Vulture being released with it, I think they'll wait until the Legionnaires come out. Now, I don't think it's going to be a thing where they delay the release of hacking if Legionnaire's not ready, but I do think that they're planning on when we see the Legionnaire pop up in the progress tracker, that's when I'd expect hacking.
I really hope they give us clarification on, because we've heard them go back and forth on kind of what it is for a graphical interface, kind of like Deus Ex, versus blocks of code that we would insert to some sort of a command prompt. I hope they give us maybe one of those like paragraphs in a monthly report where they just decide or define how it's going to work and give us a lowdown on it. They do that sometimes with the features. That would be nice.
Yeah.
How about,
we've gotten the golf swing version pitch years ago at an ISC, so hopefully we'll see how it's kind of comes straight up there.
Oy, oy, oy.
Yeah.
Are there any other features that you're like expecting this year?
Yes, I'm trying to think of what it was though. There was something that kind of crossed my mind. The new travel system and scanning systems.
Okay.
Like the long range probe stuff that they talked about, which is going to go along with the master modes and new quantum. Your favorite topic, the quantum boost.
Absolutely.
The thing that you and I collectively were just like, what is quantum boost?
For like 6
months.
months.
What is this thing that keeps showing up on the roadmap?
Yeah.
You know?
Like, please, what does this mean? And they just say little things. I hate that they like talk to us like we're always there. They're like, oh yeah, quantum boost, when you have to manually keep your path going. And we're just sitting here reading this like, what, manual quantum travel? What does that mean?
What does this mean? What do the numbers mean, Mason? What do they mean?
But anyways, for anybody who's wondering who's yelling that exact same thing at this podcast right now, quantum boost is actually a slower version of quantum travel, about 1/10 the speed they said. And it will be kind of your mid-range travel. So you'll have your normal flight speeds. You'll have quantum travel, which is taking you across the system. And then you'll have quantum boost, which you'll use to fly to an asteroid belt 50,000 kilometers away, or a derelict ship that's on a moon that's in your local neighborhood. It's going to be the real exploration phase of travel. And you think we might see that this year?
Almost certainly. I think we'll see that with master modes. I think master modes, version 1 of the master modes with that will come out this year. I do think the traversal mode, the parkour citizen stuff,
the platforming stuff,
that's almost certainly coming out this year because it's already been added to the monthly. It was in the monthly report of October being worked on for Star
That
Citizen.
will be very nice because not being able to mantle on certain things in a cave is just ridiculous.
Yeah. Mobiglass, the new star map, I think all of that stuff, because they've been really working on that. So I think that stuff is probably coming in.
You think they'll actually get the Mobiglass rework itself and not just like the star map, or because I think
it'll be a version 0, whatever the heck. It'll be jank. It will not be the final version, but it'll be the entire Mobiglass working on
building blocks.
Building blocks is what it'll be.
I think that's what they'll do. That I'm confused with it. So we know from the progress tracker we've got a tracking app for bounty hunters or for criminality. We have a hangar management app. We have, I think it was a notification app. We've got a mission manager app, and we've got the star map. So that's like 5 apps we know for sure are being worked on. My question is, are they going to introduce the new Mobiglass with just those 5 apps? Are they going to like just paste the old non like Flash UI onto this new building blocks Mobiglass? I'm confused as to how they're going to go about the Mobiglass rework.
I can almost guarantee you they will take what they have now and they will just replicate it as close as possible, because they don't know what they want to do with the Mobiglass. So they'll do what they did with PES, which is just standard. It's going to be status quo of exactly what we have now, but all running on building blocks with those new apps.
They need to do that soon then.
Yeah. It's got to be the end of the year, which is what I think is going to happen.
I would hope they'd do that 3.19 so that we can expect to see the new Mobiglass apps with the bounty hunting and stuff.
I mean, I would hope as well, but this is Cloud Imperium Games we're talking about.
I'm just saying, if the way I see it with the Mobiglass is like you can either do that or you're gonna have to build the bounty hunting app for the Mobiglass we have now, and then again in the new style on the building blocks one, whatever they do with that, which seems like a really dumb idea. So they're either gonna have to do that one first, or we're not getting bounty hunting app this year, in my opinion.
Yep.
So,
And Chris seems to want to do that before 4.0. So
we'll see.
I will also say there was another thing that kind of popped in my brain that I kind of forgot about just now for what expecting this year is, why am I blanking on it? Colonial Outposts.
You
We'll
think
have
they'll bring it to Stanton?
Yes, they've been talking about bringing them to Stanton. They said they're going to bring them to Stanton. I think we're going to get Colonial Outposts in Stanton this year. Just the non-destroyed versions. So,
okay. I hope they would have non-combat AI there. We need that. We need to be able to go somewhere and not get shot at. That would be nice.
Yeah. Because they seem to be implying that they'll have them all over Hurston, and they'll have them probably in Microtech.
It's gonna be some kind of moons, weird.
Yeah.
Okay. Going back to master modes real quick, that wasn't on the letter. You don't think it was a purposeful omission?
No, I think it was because Chris also said there's a bunch of other stuff. I think that was just something that he's not paying attention to. But I think master modes is so intrinsically entwined with new quantum travel and that kind of stuff. Though it did seem like the ship team was very, we have no idea when this is coming out last year. So
yeah,
it's hard to tell. I do think it's almost certainly going to be a 4.0 or close to 4.0 release. So it really depends on when 4.0 comes out. So I think at best we'll see master modes come out this year in 4.0 in a wave 1 PTU at the end of the year, but maybe not full release.
And for anyone who's wondering, master modes is Quantum Boost is part of master modes. Master modes splits travel up into the I guess technically 4 different modes. You have combat speeds, which are up to I think about 250, 300 meters per second. You have what they're calling travel speed, I think it's called, or traversal speed, which is up to like your max ship speed, 1,000 or 1,200 meters per second. Then you have quantum boost, which is another mode that'll take you 1/10 the speed of quantum travel. And then you also have quantum travel. So you have technically 4, but ultimately 3 modes of travel. And master modes are basically just defining those modes for you. I have some problems with it, but for the most part, it's their attempt to balance out how combat will work in a game where we can travel very fast. Because it gets kind of crazy to fight at those speeds. So hopefully we'll see that this year.
I will add this to this question to move on to the next part. When do you think all of this is going to happen, and how many updates do you think we're going to get this year?
Right. Yes. I'm supposed to be asking that. Honestly,
flipped it on you. Flip the script.
It's weird. I think I'm pretty much resigned to 3.18 taking in the Q1 patch and taking 3.19 in what would be May. I think.
Yeah,
we get it. I do think that we'll see another patch in August, which is when that third one usually drops, July, August time. And I think we'll get another one at the end of the year. I think we'll get 4 updates. Maybe one of them will be kind of like a 3.17.2 like last year was. But I think we'll get 4 solid updates with feature drops. I'm not sure there's a lot of really big features. That's what's throwing me off. Is it's a lot of stuff to work on. And I just can't imagine getting 4 loaded features or updates in 1 year. It just sounds too nice. So I'm wondering which update is going to be the low key one this year.
The dump one. It's going to be, I can tell you, it's going to be 320, because I can almost guarantee you that we'll get a 318 Q1, 319 Q2, 320 Q3, and then their 4.0 for Q4.
Makes sense.
And the 320 is going to be
4.0 to PTU for CitizenCon. please.
Yeah, I hope, but it doesn't sound like that's even
Oh, that'd
CIG
be
doesn't
so
seem to
cool.
be that
Yeah,
hopeful.
yeah.
So
No, they won't do that. He
uh,
said that in the letter too. He's like, we will get 4.0 into player hands. Like, it
yes,
might be Ivocati, but it'll be in player hands.
yes, and we know we're getting 319 this year.
Mhm.
It's this isn't something that's like, oh well, where's your source? My source is his name is Jake Bradley. He works for CIG. He does the roadmap. I've asked him directly, and he said yes, 319 is coming after 318, and it's still scheduled for quarter 1 right now of 2023. So that's what I heard from him directly right before the went on it. This was not like a behind the scenes thing. So because I've heard a lot of people be like, oh well, this is going to be just 318 this year. It's like, no, we're going to get a
That would be
319, and we're going to get a 320.
all right.
So
Future folks, if you're listening to this in late Q1 2023, please let us know. I hope we made
yep.
it. Hope we got. Hope we
Yeah.
got. I hope 319 somehow also made it as the Q1 patch. Still, that would be.
I hope.
That would be crazy.
I hope. But I can almost guarantee you that they're not going to do the same mistake that they made last year because you get the little you only released one patch this year. It's like not really. It's not how Star System patch works. They're all invented numbers that don't really mean anything. And Chris Roberts even said during his letter to the chairman that like he would have called 317 for 318, but they had promised everything for 318, so they just named it 317 or 317.2. What is it? Not 317.4.
Yeah.
So, and they did that before with like 315 and 316. People don't realize that 316 was actually 315.2 or 1 or whatever. It wasn't actually a new patch, but they called it 316 anyways.
Mm-hmm.
So that'll be the same thing. We got 319 and 320. So.
It was just a weird year with the updates.
Yep.
And it's mainly, I think, because of the timing and how unpredictable this stuff was. But I honestly, the numbers don't really matter to me. I don't care. That's why, like, I wanted to do a show where we just looked at the features rather than the updates, because who cares what number the update has? If we're getting resource management, then I don't care if it's 3.0 or 3.10, other than the fact that I had to wait 10 patches. But you know what I mean.
I will make a bold prediction. This is going to be a bold prediction, and I'll probably be wrong on this because this is what I do these shows with Space Tomato, and then a week later, CIG comes out and makes me look like a fool. So this is tradition, as is tradition. But I will say Q2 of this year is when we'll get the first versions of resource management, because that's when the progress tracker seems to be ending. And as Jake often says, just because the progress tracker ends doesn't mean something is completed,
right?
But just because it goes beyond that doesn't mean it's not being released,
right?
Because they will release features when it's still being worked on.
Just don't rely on it.
Just don't rely on it. It's it's a nice way of tracking what's being worked on. That's about it. They don't tell you exactly when anything's coming out. So based off of their own emphasis and even Chris's emphasis that part of this system is already in 318, that I expect it to be in 319. The full at least the first iteration release will be in 319.
That would be great. I would love to see that.
So,
regardless, I think of all the features we talked about today, and I'm reading probably like 12 to 15 different features, no, like 10 features we didn't talk about refining. I think we could definitely see at least half of these, and these, just one of these features, I think in a year like 2021 would have been great. But I'm really excited to see what the game looks like with, even if we were to get, say, resource management, bounty hunting, tractor beams, and the cargo refactor all in 1 year. Would be great. After playing 318 and feeling how it is to kind of actually start interacting with cargo and using PES, I can see how these features would be a lot of fun to experiment with.
Yeah, I think this year is going to be filled with gameplay, because we didn't even mention things like almost certainly we're going to have events. CIG has not really stopped making events for the game. We're certainly going to have some sort of event for 318 release or for 319.
Yeah,
where some like a Siege of Orison or Ninetales Lockdown will have something new. CIG really wants to do that. So
we didn't talk about the events. We didn't talk about acidic and ice caves they're planning to try and do. We didn't talk about the new satellites that they're talking about, underground bunkers that they're working on, investigation missions. Like, there's a lot of stuff still that we didn't mention today.
Yeah, I was going to say, I also would expect UGFs and Loreville 2.0 to come out this year too.
Hmm.
So
Building
it helps
interiors.
that, yeah, and building. We'll see. I hope so, because it's Montreal, and Montreal is insane with those sorts of things. But yeah, we'll hope. So
there's a solid amount of stuff to look forward to, and I'm interested to see what happens. Like you said, we don't really go into the year with this level of blindness. We have to wait for
Usually.
February for them to update us really on what their plans are for the year, but we'll keep an eye out. To finish things off, what is something that you think everyone should know or keep in mind now that you've seen the letter and gotten a better idea of what the year is? What is something that backers should remember going into this year?
Everything can change and will change.
The universal law. That's a cop out. You could say that every year.
Yeah, but I mean, it's make sure. The other thing I would say is never ever think that just because CIG says something, it's the only thing that's coming. CIG is notorious for stealth editions. The racing, for instance, an entire profession, racing as a profession, exists in game. And it was just a last minute, like 2 weeks before it went live. Hey, by the way, dunk, here you go, goodbye. Like that came out of nowhere. And as you've said famously, that CIG, as we go forward, will start adding more and more things that they don't talk about. That's the thing to look for, is look for those content. Look for things like new missions, new locations, places that may have been hinted or referenced, but aren't like fully put into the roadmap or talked about in an ISC, just because they like to do that, experiments and stuff like that. So
yeah, I'm ready to be surprised by the Aaron Halo belt. CIG.
I'd love it.
Please.
Yes, please. a full pirate asteroid base inside the Aaron Halo belt. There we go.
With the giant worm living inside.
Yes.
My thing for everyone to think about this year is forget about pyro.
Yes.
It sounds, I mean, it's not like pyro is important, but it's really hard. It feels like ships to me. I never really care that much about ships. I love them. They're pretty. They're fun. We wouldn't have a game without them. But like a ship comes out and I'm like, oh, okay, cool. What can we do with it? Like if pyro comes out, ask the question, what are you going to do there? You know, they're definitely going to have expansion in gameplay. But when you look at the features we get this year compared to pyro, it's like the gameplay is, in my opinion, something to be more excited for. So I say forget about pyro this year. Hope that it gets done. Hope that it gets work. But like start looking more into these actual gameplay additions that they're looking to make. Get excited for how the game itself is going to change instead of just the scenery around us.
I agree. Perfect way of ending it.
The rally cry. Forget pyro. No, just we love pyro. We want pyro, but like,
it's not the be all and end all.
It's hearing about it now.
I think everyone's tired of hearing about it, and I think if I was going to give one advice to CIG, don't make CitizenCon about pyro. We're done. We're done hearing.
Everybody's going to be saying that. We don't want to hear about it anymore. Please.
Yeah.
Not even server meshing. They don't need to talk that much about server meshing anymore either. Just kind of updates on it. But like pyro, server meshing, that whole side of the project, I think should just be heads down, work done. Let's focus on like the professions and gameplay coming in. It's more fun.
Mm-hmm.
Not as depressing. Anyways, everybody, thank you so much for coming to this episode of the launch sequence. Thanks for coming live if you did on Twitch. We do this every once in a while, but if you want, you can come and check it out as a supporter every single week here on the Discord channel. If you're a Twitch subscriber, YouTube channel member, or Patreon member, check us out. And Paul, if you will, please let everybody know where they can find your own content, your own podcast, because he's the original. I mean, in my mind, I know there's been plenty of Star Citizen podcasts, but like when I came in here and I started making content, I was talking to Execute from Info Runners. He's like, dude, if you want to get into the Star Citizen community, go on Captain's Table. So please tell people where they can go for the Captain's Table to listen to some goodness.
Saturdays, twitch.tv/TheAstroPub. And if you want to watch it after the fact, I always release them on Mondays on youtube.com/TheAstroPub live.
Awesome. Thank you. And you're on the old Twitter too, right?
Yes, twitter.com/TheAstroPub, Hive at TheAstroPub, just pretty much TheAstroPub everywhere.
Hot tweets, AstroPub. Cool. Thank you so much. And thanks again, everybody, for coming. This was episode 85 of the Launch Sequence podcast. We'll be back at it again next week. And I'll see you all then. Have a good week.